the aspects around, taking the right decisions, taking courage and being transparent in front of the client, right? These are some of the things we value even at PS, wherein, people, they do not have fear of failure.
Processes and all obviously have to be in place, but as product leaders, we have to create that sort of environment where people feel comfortable navigating. What do you think is your invisible KPI? Something that cannot be measured, but makes all the difference nonetheless.
It is to find that balance between what's right for our clients, our business, and our people. In our culture, you are not penalized for trying.
All of these small things are very invisible. They are not something which you can measure, but these are the moments that help you build trust.
I try to hold energy for the team. People don't just work for organizations, they work for people.
The culture, psychological safety, enablement, empowerment, and that's what PS is all about.
Every week, our teams wrestle with shifting priorities, evolving roadmaps, and the familiar mix of uncertainty and urgency. A client changes direction, a small tweak derails the entire sprint, a dependency slips. In the middle of all of it, assumptions go unspoken and clarity starts to fade. But what if clarity isn't something that you look for, but something that you build? Welcome to the Value Builders, where we unpack how product and program leaders transform ambiguity into alignment and turn real projects into real progress. I'm Shruti Srivastava, and I work in the PS product management capability for the last 6 years. And joining me today are two veterans from the space of program management, Dhruv Jain and Shalini Shankar. Thank you so much for being on board.
Thank you, Shruti, for having us.
Great to be here, Shruti.
If I were to ask you to describe your role without your designations, what would you say? Shalini, let's start with you.
Sure. At the core of it, I work day in and day out with clients, essentially to deeply understand their business and actually to work with them, not just to produce certain deliverables, but actually to understand the impact that they want to generate for their own businesses. I'm also a people enabler, essentially bringing a team together to deliver something for the client which we've set out to achieve. In today's world where AI is reshaping a lot of our roles, my role also involves ensuring that the teams work together to not just consider AI as something which is a threat, but use AI as more of a partner and more of something that they can collaborate with.
Now, what keeps me energized through all of this is my desire to continuously learn. Because I believe curiosity and learnability are two key factors that allow us to keep disrupting ourselves. And let's take today's world, right? We are integrating AI into every layer of our work. And that is my endeavor. I want to enable my teams and serve to continuously reskill ourselves, not because it is mandated, but because curiosity and adaptiveness, that will keep us relevant and resilient in a world that's moving this fast.
But beyond, the traditional frameworks and the rituals that we follow, I feel like product leadership is more about sense making, drawing patterns out of chaos and then turning them into decisions that move organizations and people forward. So Dhruv, you spoke about chaos and that got me really curious. What was your first real moment of chaos that got you hooked into this craft?
My first moment of chaos happened before I had stepped into program management. It was way back in 2010. I had taken on the role of release manager, DevOps manager for a telecom major transformation initiative. And I had zero experience in release management and DevOps. I guess the leadership was confident in my bravery in face of a challenge. So I joined as a release manager, and what do I get to know? The builds are taking 2 days to stabilize. Now, my first build, the team and I are fixing one defect and another is cropping up. And we stabilized the environment at 2 a.m. after about 24 hours of chaos spread across 2 days. But the next few months, the team and I, we worked with purpose. We brought this time down to about 2 to 3 hours, and back then it was magic. But to think of it, it really wasn't. It was about discipline, data, and collective ownership. So we used data to pinpoint the exact bottleneck, the biggest constraint, and we resolved it one by one. We planned better by having teams build support into sprint plans. And we built strong alignment so that learning and fixes, they are not sitting in silos waiting on each other. Now, this experience, it changed how I viewed chaos. It was not something that I had to avoid, I had to eliminate, but it was something I had to decode. And it also taught me the importance of continuous learning under pressure. The team and I, we were continuously upskilling ourselves real time through experimentation, through shared problem solving. So, in a nutshell, right, if you stay calm, if you stay curious, and if you are collaborative, you will always find a pattern hidden inside the chaos. And when you do, that's when the real magic starts. And that lesson sort of has stayed with me. But now I would like to hear from both of you what that moment was for you. Let's start with you, Shruti.
So I think, Dhruv, there are certain personality types that thrive in ambiguous environments. I think I'm one of them. I think my very first project here at Publicis Sapient kind of proved it for me. I had stepped in midstream. I was replacing a product manager, and we were working for a retail client who was big in the physical stores, but we were building a platform for them, which would be an additional source of revenue for them. Well, when I stepped in, we were in the last sprint. We were going to open up for user acceptance testing with the clients really soon. But there were huge gaps in the user flow. There were additional requirements on scope that had been added. So the brief for me was fairly simple but very brutal. Get ramped up, plug the holes, and still ship on time. Right. So I remember when I look back now, whiteboarding on design, with design, sitting in QA huddles, reprioritizing stuff, adjusting new deliverables that had been added at that point in time. But I think what got us through was not like a process, but it was people. The shared vision that we had for value at that point in time. We were helping each other ramp up. We were taking on different roles and all of that. And it was, that moment, which was when we shipped the product and it worked, it was absolutely, electric. So I realized that wherever there is, responsibility with an impact, where you're actually able to, distill out everything from a project and generate value, I think that is intoxicating, and I think that was my moment of reckoning. But Shalini, what about you?
Well, for me, this happened almost 2 years back when we started a multi-year engagement with a German client. And this client wanted to actually consolidate a lot of their systems, which were spread across multiple geographies, 4 geographies to be precise, and to bring together a single ETRM implementation. Imagine the complexity of this particular engagement, wherein it was not just understanding the requirements across these 4 systems, but it was also bringing together almost 60 plus interfaces and coming up with one ETRM. Our team worked tirelessly to come together with 800 plus business requirements, which had to be laid down into a program roadmap which spanned almost 18 months. The complexity was there, but then along with it came its struggles, right? And that's where the moment of chaos happened for me, where everything went wrong, right? From the stakeholders not being aligned on the client side to roles and responsibilities, changing all the time, because we had senior stakeholders both onshore as well as offshore. Imagine like too many directors, associate directors together working on such a long running program. And what happens? The only thing happens is, this is what I need to do and this is what you need to do. And we start stepping on each other's shoes. On top of that, we had a junior team, a green team, which was learning right angle, which was one of our technologies at that point in time. All of this, I think what I wanted to bring out with this is 3 things that really worked for me. One, the alignment. Now, alignment not just with our own teams along the roles and responsibilities, but also with client IT as well as with client business stakeholders, wherein all of us came together in a workshop model to define what we are setting out to achieve. Also, alignment more from a collective ownership perspective. So that worked for me really well. The second thing that worked for me really well was clarity around status. So essentially, every project manager on the team, every product manager, every technology lead, in fact, every developer had the same view of status across the board. This was achieved not just through process. Of course, process was one angle of it, right? But also to ensure people are talking to each other on a regular basis. And also there is collective ownership around the status, right? Across onshore, offshore, and across all the different teams and crafts. The third thing which worked really well for me in this kind of a situation was investing in people learning. So essentially creating learning boundaries for people, and in fact, creating that for the ETRM domain specifically, right? So that people not just understand the technology, but also the business of that. This reaped us benefits not just for this particular engagement, but actually we could create a cohort of experts who could be deployed across other engagements, right? Taking this a little bit deeper, right? What was one of the train wreck situations for you, Dhruv, and which helped you turn it around? I'm sure there were many.
This was for a North American retail major. We were doing a transformation initiative called front end optimization. The goal in 9 months was to break a monolith commerce application into modular layers, redesign the customer experience, re-engineer systems like search. And 3 months in, we had very little to show for. The teams were sort of exhausted. The approach kept changing, and this was not necessarily on PS, but well, chaos was the norm. And coincidentally, this was the same time I joined in as program lead on this initiative. My first instinct was to go back to what I learned way back in 2010, decode the chaos. So I started collecting data on where we stood with respect to the critical path, remaining effort versus capacity, burn downs, the whole 9 yards. And the insight was hard to digest. We were almost 3 months delayed. And these are the moments where real leadership shines through. And the leaders at the time, they did not choose to panic. They did not get into blame game. Instead, they created space for honest conversations. And that was the turning point, the moment of, okay, now what? So we get into the trenches, we rebuild the plan from ground up, sharper priorities, realistic sequencing, and shared ownership. And then we brought the team together, explained them the situation, made it personal the rest of the journey. We are now playing for pride. And that was the turning point. The team pulled together, the clients trusted the transparency, and we did deliver on time with quality and energy intact. Now, this turnaround wasn't a miracle. It was about clarity, transparency, and shared accountability. And underneath it all was the trust that enabled the team to speak up, to ask for help.
Yeah.
And that's chaos decoded again. What about you, Shalini? Any difference in experience for you?
Sure, Dhruv. I'd like to talk about, around almost 15 years back when I was playing a project manager role in one of the clients on the financial services side of things. In the middle of the project, right, almost 5 weeks to remaining to UAT, the client comes up with a new requirement, right? I mean, all of us deal with such situations always, right? But this was very critical, and the client said we cannot go live unless we incorporate this change into the system. At this point in time, imagine most bills done. We are almost set to go into UAT, and a lot needs to change. That point in time, the decision was to go back to client, right, or to actually go ahead and incorporate the change, right? It required a lot of thinking, right? And as a project manager, I think my biggest learning at that point in time was to be transparent with the client, to go and talk about impacts, to actually discuss what makes sense and what doesn't make sense at that point in time for their own business, right? So at the end of the day, we are in the business of making them, look good in front of their own clients, and all of this learnings has actually stayed with me even today. The aspects around taking the right decisions, doing the right things even when no one's asking you to, no one's watching, taking courage and being transparent in front of the client, right? These are some of the things we value even at PS, wherein people experiment and they do not have fear of failure.
And I feel like a lot of us, face similar things. But let me tell you my story.
Sure.
This is, a recent project that we did for a global athleisure brand based out of North America. We were extremely excited to have this brand on board with PS. But we knew that from the get-go, the timelines are going to be super aggressive and the scope was huge. So to counter that, we set up sort of like a cross-continental team just to ensure business continuity. And to get a head start, we also, started doing some foundational work to begin with to save time. What we were essentially trying to do is provide them a digital unified experiences across, their various websites and app. However, as you would imagine, the distributed product development has its own challenges, and we were soon hit by multiple things. So, for example, unclear ownership, miscommunication across different time zones, additional scope additions, and things like that. And it felt like at some point that product was developing different products across these geographies, and we felt like our North Star was drifting away. So while I think all these problems were known, and going back to the things that you were talking about, processes that were put in place, statuses, communication, and not just internally, externally, but also that moment where you take a step back to actually analyze what the root cause is, right? So apart from mapping out the deliverables and the dependencies, etc., we also started to center the team around value and empathy. And what I mean by that is, we also started to look at which person is blocked for what exactly. How can we help that person? And also, which person's burning out, because we all put in a lot of hard work, right? And just by unblocking things like this and stepping in. So, for example, QA was providing usability insights. Design was sitting with backend to solve for their obstacles. Product was helping program with their responsibilities. So just small adjustments like this made a really huge difference, and we felt like alignment came back to us. So when you were talking about Dhruv, your examples, and Shalini, your examples, I think one common theme that was emerging was processes and all obviously have to be in place, but as product leaders, we have to create that sort of environment where people, feel comfortable navigating. Right. So I think that was one takeaway from me, for me, talking to both of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Shalini and Dhruv, I have a very interesting adjacent question. What do you think is your invisible KPI? Something that cannot be measured, but makes all the difference nonetheless. Dhruv?
So for me, it's also the toughest part of my job. It is to find that balance between what's right for our clients, our business, and our people. And getting all three to align perfectly, that's rare. And whenever it doesn't happen, it is also very testing. But this is where I resort back to what I love doing most, which has been my lifesaver many a times: experimenting. I reframe conversations, I tinker with processes, rethink timings. I even explore what's driving people. So think of it as me running small human centered experiments to get to a solution that works for everyone involved. And experiments are experiments, they'll not always be successful, which is okay. And that's the beauty of it. In our culture, you are not penalized for trying, you are encouraged to learn, to grow, and to succeed as much through the misses as the wins. And over time, these so-called failures, they've shaped my instincts. They've made me more comfortable with ambiguity, because experimenting is necessarily a risk. It is part of how we evolve.
Invisible KPI, and very difficult to think, right? Definitely. But for me, it is simply the small things I do in my day job, right? It is the connections I build with people, right? So let me talk about a few examples here, right? Like, for example, having, sharing my perspective with my dev lead, to actually unravel some of his own challenges he's facing. Talking to, a new mother, right? And sharing her challenges, right? Talking to my project manager and preparing him for a client meeting wherein I take a step back and he's the one presenting to the client. Shielding my team, when needed, and jumping in to help out in the middle of a client meeting, for example, right? Also sharing the joys as well as the struggles, of my team members, right? Giving them space, giving them empathy when needed during a tough time, managing when they are absent, as an example. And I'd love to share one instance, and this one is something which really touched me, right? This is one of my dev leads, who had a newborn, right? After almost, 2 years, 3 years of trying to, conceive. And this is the time when he actually, did a video call and he shared, that joy with me, right? To take my blessings. All of these small things are very invisible. They are not something which you can measure, but these are the moments that help you build trust, that help you build long-term association, and this is the team which comes together to solve problems.
I probably feel exactly the same, but maybe just put differently. I think what I really like to do is, design these emotional environments. And what I mean by emotional environments is I try to hold energy for the team. Right. I generally like to be that person that any person can come to when they're feeling overwhelmed, whether it is just to vent or it is to reset. And what that does is that it kind of builds that trust, Shalini, as you were saying.
Yeah.
It builds that rapport, and what it gives me is a view into the emotional load that a person is carrying. So it makes us very mindful of, not just project work, but other things that they're doing. And once you kind of establish that sort of trust or that rapport, it's very easy for you to, kind of ask for more on the job, and people willingly do it, not because they have to, because then they want to, because I truly believe that people don't just work for organizations, they work for people, and people who make them feel safe, respected, and seen. I think that makes all the difference.
It's amazing how the three stories have brought out the culture, psychological safety, enablement, empowerment, and that's what PS is all about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think the only thing that I'd like to add is, like you said, Dhruv, I think PS is also very huge on people and encouraging people. So not just people in product, but people in your team, you can definitely advise them on what they can take up as, a learning path. And we've been helping people craft those paths. So this is definitely, I think all of us as leaders are trying to do for our, reportees and people that we work with. So Shalini, my next question is to you. How is definition of value changing, for our clients, for our users, for our employees? What does value mean now, given that AI can generate features but not meaning?
So, Shruti and Dhruv, I think the definition of value is actually changing a lot from, measuring it via just speed or revenue to moving to relevance, right? Like for our clients, it's about connecting the AI-driven capabilities that we are delivering to them to unlock meaning and to actually bring the human power and the knowledge in front, along with the AI-driven capabilities. For our teams, it's about learning faster, right? And going to our clients with a finished product as soon as possible. For our users, it is about making them, not just serving them, but actually understanding them, right? So today, AI, as you rightly mentioned, Shruti, can easily mock up, screens, it can write code, but can it really generate meaning if there is no human relevance built into it? So to me, AI is all about building, human relevance into that sphere, right? Let's talk about this whole, change in our lives a little bit more. And maybe I want to understand from you, Dhruv, like how have you used AI in your day to day?
So for me, Gen AI has changed fundamentally how I operate and how I create value. I've used Gen AI for things like assessing core values in interviews, identifying recognition winners, creating training content, developing plan ideas, especially where we are dealing with abstract scope, writing recognitions, identifying talking points, especially for conversations where influencing is required. So, nutshell, Gen AI is not just about efficiency for me. It is my sounding board. It is my guide to help navigate ambiguity. And like everything else, it didn't happen overnight. I had to upskill myself on how to use AI effectively through programs that PS offered and also by trial and error. And it's not plug and play how you use Gen AI for different scenarios. You got to develop an understanding of when to use it, how to prompt it, and where human intervention or human judgment must override it. right? So at this point in time, we are all building a new layer of our capability, but it is no longer a differentiator. It has become a hygiene factor as fundamental as using Excels and Jiras. But that's me. Shruti, how has this AI landscape evolved for product?
Yeah. So for product, I see that. So first of all, yes, there are so many learning trails that we have currently, and it is hygiene. It's no longer like an option that you may or may not exercise. But there is a learning curve that I observe for product managers, and at the base, it starts off with say automating documentation, right? So through Figma files or through bullet points, you go ahead, you generate your detailed PRDs, or you write crisp user stories, and there are a lot of tools available online. So Notion AI, maybe, for example, they use that. They make this whole process very seamless. The next layers is synthesis of data. So for example, if you're trying to pull insights out of your customer tickets, or you've conducted interviews, something that you were spending hours on or days on earlier, all of these themes can now emerge within a few hours. In addition to that, there's also, alignment work. Okay, so you may have a brief, but you can, kind of fashion the brief for various audiences. So whether it's an engineering sync or a client demo, or just, an executive leadership deck, you can use tools online to create that deck which talk the right language for the right, directed towards the right stakeholders. But I think the most interesting one that we're talking about currently is how, there is a bridge between design and engineering. So if you've heard of tools like Wizard and, Figma's AI Assist and Lovables, they help you create a prototype with a plain language, plain simple English prompt. So for example, you say you've browsed a product, you added it to cart and checked out, and you provide that as a prompt, you get a working clickable working prototype, which engineers can now validate, and it cuts down a lot of time. But I think at the highest, and there are other levels, but I think at the highest level is when you stop using AI as a writing partner, but start thinking of it as a thinking partner. So you may want to ask a question like, what are the trade-offs that I'm making with a certain decision, or how can I approach this problem differently, for example, right? And that's when it becomes like a judgment amplifier. So, it's a very interesting learning curve, as I spoke, just starting from productivity, stepping into real product intelligence, and, a lot more for us to see where we go with it. But I think this is interesting, and all the learning trails that we currently have encourage all product managers to go ahead and experiment, like you said, learn more. And I think at PS, this is something that we really, encourage people to go ahead and do.
Exactly. And PS has built platforms now, Bodhi, Slingshot, that
Absolutely.
make this Gen AI driven work the default itself.
Absolutely. And I mean, we talk about product managers, but like for our organization as a whole, this is something PS has taken care of all crafts and capabilities, so that we can together speak a unified language.
In fact, some of these tools, Dhruv and Shruti, right, Bodhi and Slingshot, are almost our DNA, right?
Absolutely.
And every client conversation that we go to, right, we talk about these, and all of the examples that you spoke about, right, whether it's from a product or a program perspective, right, these tools help us elevate our presence and our impact, so to say.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Shalini and Dhruv, great insight so far, but time to make it a little lighter. I have a lightning round for you. I will ask you a few questions, but no overthinking. Whatever is the first word that comes to you, say it out loud.
Go.
Are you ready?
Yes.
One word that defines a great product leader. So for me, it's fearless. You have to walk the chaos and still remain calm. What is that one word for you?
I'll say curious, because half of our job is saying, but wait, why?
For me, it's authentic, right? Showing up, every day with my true self.
Wonderful. The next one, coffee or chai during sprint planning?
For me, it's green tea. No coffee, no chai, man.
What about you, Dhruv?
Both. Depends on the flavor of the day. Today it was coffee.
I can't do without my strong cup of black coffee. So that makes sense. The last one. What's your PM superpower?
Also data and experimentation.
For me, it's all about structure and empathy.
I would say outcome obsession is mine.
Well, that was fun. One key takeaway from me, though, is that clarity isn't about figuring out, within the chaos, but it is actually leading through it. What about you, Dhruv?
For me, it is that at PS, we invest in our people. We enable them with the right tools, and then we let them get the space to build the products that make a difference, that matter.
Yeah, absolutely.